that's when where it began from. The thought was in 76 and 89, that's when I went full-time into rural development. And that's the story I'm going to share with you, because the success of that program actually led the government of India to set up a national watershed development fund, which today has taken that program that we began in 1989 across the country. It's still running even today. But I'll share with you then the story of Watershed Organization Trust. That's the organization I co-founded with Father Baka. And that's where we are today. About 32 years later, we have a presence now in 8 states in the country and 83 districts, and we've worked and continue to work in about 7,638 villages. We work in 3 areas on the ground. So it all began actually in 1976 when I went from Goa. I'm from Goa actually, and I went to the Ahmednagar district, right? And at that time, Ahmednagar was practically a semi-arid desert. See, anyway, naturally, it's known as one of India's most drought-prone regions. And the rainfall there, to give you an idea, is from about 50 millimeters to a maximum 500 millimeters. And on average, it's about 150 to 200 millimeters. To give you an idea of what that means, the Konkan, which is very nearby, it's a stone throw away actually, ranges from 2,500 to 3,500 millimeters. Now, and it's impossible. It's a huge difference. So it's known as a drought-prone area. And I went in 76. Following a drought of 1972, which was considered a disaster. It's one of India's most severe drought and the worst Ahmednagar district had probably in a century. Led to degradation of the environment, cutting of trees, mass migration, and very severe endemic poverty. I met at that time a man called Father Herman Baka. He was a Swiss Jesuit, lived in India for 60 years, he's no more now. At that time, he was organizing these communities to actually get water. In those days, water was from wells, from rivers, so he helped them build dams, lift irrigation scheme, dug wells. And when I saw the transformation that made to the lives of the communities, it touched me, see? And when you see the joy and what difference water can make in a village and how it helps them to get out of poverty, I said, I want to be part of this. I want to contribute something. So that's where it all began. Roll forward to 1989. That's when I met him again, and he invited me to join him in launching a very large-scale program, which came to be called as the Indo-German Watershed Development Program, which basically wanted to organize rural communities in Maharashtra to capture rainwater wherever it fell, across the landscapes, the catchments, the watersheds they lived in, and then to use that water productively. Why? I'll explain to you as we go along. And that's when I joined him in 1989, and I was the first program coordinator of the Indo-German Watershed Program. And was so successful that in 1999, the government of India set up the Watershed Development Fund at the national level, which has taken this program now across the country. So it's still running. And it was at that time, actually in 1993, that we set up the Watershed Organization Trust, or WOTR, Water, whose story I will now tell you. And it will also explain why we do what we do. So today we work in 10 states in the country. We worked in 10 states and over 7,000 villages. And we work in the area of implementation, so doing things on the ground, policy and research and policy advocacy, training and capacity building. Because we believe that what works on the ground must be scaled up. Now you can't do that without entering into partnerships, without working with government, without contributing to policy enablement. And so you need also applied research. So we are into that and training and capacity building. So that's the scale of our work. Over 4.12 million hectares of land treated, over 8.45 million lives touched. Training and capacity building is an important component, so over about 900,000 of them. And we have research and publication also. Now, this is the context of our work. Why do we do what we do? You must keep in mind about 70% of our country is rain-fed. It depends on rain for life as well as economy. And those risks from 1970s to now have increased exponentially. These are the figures. And by Niti Aayog's own admission, it says 600 million people, that's a little more than half our population, about that much, is facing high water stress. But officially now, India is already in the water stress zone. See, when the availability of water per capita goes below 1,700 cubic meters, then you are water stressed. We're already there and declining. And now you see agriculture, it sustains about 58% of our population and consumes 83% of our water. So if we don't get our heads wrapped around this problem of water, First, for its availability in agriculture and the fact that 83% of it is used by agriculture, then we won't be able to solve the problem of drinking water for all of us, let alone drinking for industry and business. And of course, if it's estimated by 2050, scarcity of water will reduce our GDP by 6%. And climate change is only going to make it worse. So these are the contexts and these are the areas we work in. And we believe that if you really want to address this issue of water scarcity and poverty that is attached to it, you organize communities to capture rainwater, because that's the only source of water you really have. Groundwater comes from rainwater that is infiltrated into the ground, right? And India depends heavily on groundwater. In fact, 60% of our water usage comes from the ground today, which is very different from at independence time, where only 30% of that came from groundwater. You see, and we are the biggest users of groundwater in the world. That's not an accolade. That's very dangerous for us. So we say capture rainwater across the landscapes, use it well and efficiently. One of the biggest problems we have is not availability of water. We are one of the very few countries that are very blessed with water. We have plenty. But it's never going to be enough if you waste it, if you don't know how to use it efficiently. So efficient and effective management and use of water is key. Agriculture, we need to increase our productivity because our population is growing. Worldwide, it's estimated that we'll soon be 10 billion, as the world population, and we won't have enough food for that because land is fixed. So the only way you can meet the increasing and growing demands of food and fiber is by increasing productivity. Women. India's agriculture is today largely feminized. Okay? That's the elephant in the room that is not spoken about. It's the women who are holding agriculture in rural India today. So it offers opportunities, also puts threats on them, but it's an opportunity for us to advance the cause of women's promotion and allow them to take their place in the sun in our society. So we focus on empowering women and strengthening health, sanitation, hygiene, and nutrition. Sadly, malnutrition still stalks our country. So, about 38% to up to 50% in some places of our children are malnourished. Now, that's one of the big agendas of women. So if you really want to empower women, you also have to look at health, sanitation, nutrition, and hygiene. This is the kind of work we do, but it's all centered around land and water management, because that's like a hanger on which you can hang all the other things that you do. So climate resilient agriculture, livelihoods, women's empowerment, health, sanitation, and they all hinge upon this core work of land, water, and biodiversity management. We also have, as I said, a research and advocacy unit, and that's because if you want to really have impact at scale, you need to contribute to making enabling policies, which means government. And government needs data, it needs insights from the ground to help formulate effective policies. So we do a lot of applied research. We work with government. We are always working with government from day one. And these are the areas of our work. And the findings of this is fed into decision-making policy systems. So now here's an explanation of what we do and why. This is a real short view of a rural landscape. So when rain falls, it runs down the hills, gathers into the rills, into the rivulets, into the streams, and then goes out. Our goal, when you say watershed development, when we say catch rainwater everywhere, is from the ridge to the valley, you want to make water, when it's rushing, you want to make it walk. Walking water, you want to stop it. And stopped water, you want to sink it underground. That's the only way you can capture rainwater. And it has to be at this scale. So if you notice, there are a number of treatments that you see there, right? When you're from the ridge downwards, you see those continuous contour trenches, you see those terraces, you see the farm bunds. When you come down on the river system, you have these check dams, the gully plugs upstairs, which you can't see. The whole idea is reduce the flow of water, slow it down, stop it, let it go underground. These are the kind of activities that you involve communities in. They are massive works. And that area I've shown you is about 10 square kilometers. Okay? And that's the scale you need if you want to capture water in any large-scale, meaningful manner. So you get communities to do it, because at the heart of the matter is India is the land holdings are privatized. So unless you mobilize a community to get together and to change its landscape and manage it, you can't do it. So an entire community has to come together. That's what we call the supply side augmentation of water, where you capture rainwater. But then you need to manage it. And if groundwater is your biggest problem, then people must understand the relationship between surface runoff, surface water, and groundwater. Then only you can uncover the unknown or visibilize the invisible and manage it. You can't manage what you don't see. So that's where communities are taught how to do hydrological modeling. That means get to understand the surface as well as underground landscape, to do water budgeting, groundwater management, aquifer management, and how to use water efficiently. So these are all various snapshots of what it means to manage water in rural India. Agriculture, as I told you, 58% of our people depend on it, and it consumes 83% of water. Now it's buffeted and affected by climate change. So you need to have an agriculture approach which is resilient to climate change, maintains productivity, does not damage the soil, in fact, improves the health of the soil, and is able to respond to changing weather patterns. So this is all that we do. We have our own app. We have developed our app, which gives plant and soil as well as crop specific advisories as the weather changes, together with livestock advisories also. Women, as I said, are at the heart of our work. We've got about 250,000 women involved in this. And the main point is to integrate women into the decision-making processes of the village, both of the household and the village, with the participation and acceptance and support of the men. You see, the symbol or the motif we use is the two wheels of a bullock cart. If one wheel doesn't exist, the bullock cart doesn't move forward. If one wheel is bigger than the other, it goes in a circle, it doesn't go forward. But if both are together, pointing in the same direction, then you get somewhere. So it's very important in these areas that it becomes an all of family affair, an all of community affair to bring about sustained transitions. It cannot be an either or, it has to be and both. It's not easy, but it can be done. And then, of course, with the economic empowerment goes also inclusion in the decision-making process of panchayat. So many of our women have become sarpanchas. And then also these are the various kind of activities they take to improve their economics, their livelihoods, as well as their nutrition status. I told you about Sangamne Ahmednagar district. So this is a village called Darewadi. It's about 15 square kilometers. Average rainfall 300 to 400 millimeters. Can you see? Yeah, 300 to 400 millimeters. And it was like this when we, sorry. Oh, something is wrong. There were 3 pictures there that should be opening up. Anyway, it was completely barren. I'll show you a film. Maybe that film will be okay. It was completely barren. So you can imagine this without the streets. And that's how it looks today. These people would migrate for 6 months in the year. There was no drinking water. Now people who are left have come back. And there used to be formerly about 9 varsities, that's gone to about 15, which means people have come from other villages to stay here. And this is only one village. Like that, I'll show you dozens of them. Sorry. This is an economic study done. We've done studies where we studied over time the difference in economics impact of villages which were treated and non-treated in the hilly regions as opposed to the plateau regions. So we take, for instance, this one as the plateau region. On an average, when we did the study, the net income per family was about 1,60,000 rupees. In the control village, where no work was done, was about 42,000. So in other words, villages where work was done had 4 times more income than villages where work was not done. So when you do work of this type, where you treat an entire landscape, not only do you transform the landscape, you also transform lives. This is over a period of 20 years. So even though work ended 20 years ago, it's still going on and growing, in fact. So in these villages now, there's hardly any poverty left. This is the kind of overall impact we've had over the years. We have treated, as I said, 4.12 million hectares. There's been a 121% increase in the area under triple cropping. Farm incomes have gone at least 2 to 4 times more on a sustained basis. It's not an occasional episodic event. Benefit cost ratio, those of you since you're doing business, compare this with what you get in industry, where you have a BC ratio of 2.28 to 3.76 and an internal rate of return of plus 22%. That's pretty high even by any metrics or valuation. So when you do when you regenerate natural resources and manage them well, it makes perfect economic sense, not only for the community, but also for individuals. And reduction in debt, migration, etc. Here's the kicker. When you build a road, you don't do it right, first rains, you get potholes, you know that. So the test of the quality of a job is not only what returns it gives immediately, but how long they deliver. 10, 15, 20 years after we close down these projects, they're still delivering mega returns on a sustained basis, drought or no drought. Now that's what you call what works. And that's the presentation we've been making constantly. When you get a community in rural areas to mobilize themselves and regenerate the landscapes they live in, which means basically capture rainwater, you can transform their lives, their communities' lives, as well as of the family, as well as of the landscape. These are some of the impacts on policy. I won't go into that. Thank you. But there's a small 5-minute film. If you have the time, feel free to do that. If not, that's fine. Thanks.